All right, everyone. I guess we've got everything going against us today, but that's okay. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Although I got to admit, I have not checked it outside, but it appears to be a beautiful Sunday, at least here, hopefully where you are as well. And it's a post week 4. It's leading into week 5. We'll focus on week 4 here because, of course, it's the big weekend Sunday morning wrap up show. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Apologize for the delay today because our goal is to be on here as we were the first 3 weekends of the season, 11 a.m. Eastern time. This is basically what happened. We got done here at 2:15, something like that. I saw that Corey Bradda was still on with Don Patterson doing the Iowa post game. They were on for maybe another 15 minutes or so. Traded some messages over there. Then I got intrigued, as I always do, because college football, the most frustrating sport on a Saturday for us diehards. The most frustrating, the most satisfying, the most exciting, exhilarating, but the most frustrating sport on Saturdays because everybody's playing. Almost everybody in the country is playing, therefore you can't watch everyone. And I go to great lengths, as most college football fans do in this day and age, to watch as many games as possible at the same time, but I can only focus on 2. I may throw 3 on. I can only focus on 2 at best. So, and then I start recording after the noon window's over, and that impedes into the 3:30 window. And I had all sorts of issues with YouTube TV yesterday because the plan is pretty simple. Watch the noon games, post the videos after the noon games. By the time I do that, it's 4:30, 4:45, which means I've missed close to the first half of the 3:30 games. Well, YouTube TV, they're on record. They're in my library. Every game is recorded. And then also, they give you the option, if you go to live TV, join this live or from the beginning. Every time I hit from the beginning yesterday, click, click, boom, straight live. And then I log out. I tried it, I don't know how many times with the USC-Michigan game. I saw that Michigan was up 14-0. I wanted to watch it from the beginning. With all the commercial breaks, I will catch up with the action. No, would not allow me to start the game from the beginning. And then Utah, Oklahoma State, the same thing. Those were the 2 games I wanted to see at 3:30. But it would not allow me to do that. The folks at YouTube TV, fix your problem, please. Because, hey, anytime there's any kind of operational issue, people call them technical issues. They're really not technical. They're more operational issues. Then I point at myself first and foremost. I think, well, I'm the knucklehead that can't figure this out, figure this technology out. Just look around, try to figure it out. It's on me. This one, no, clearly join live, start from the beginning. Click start from the beginning. It clicks to join live. Don't know what to tell you. So anyway, as I'm apt to do after a Saturday night show, and actually us wrapping up at 2:05 last night Eastern time was a pretty short show, or pretty much in the range of when we finish. We've certainly taken this thing till 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, depending on the crowd and depending on the calls. But after I exchanged some messages with Corey, watched a little bit of his show, and then I get curious about other games because I missed everything. I missed, you can only watch 6 games a day, basically. So I missed all those other games. And I was first and foremost intrigued in the Rutgers-Virginia Tech game. So yes, I watched a 25-minute cut down of Rutgers-Virginia Tech. I'm looking all over the nation at stats and scores, trying to find out what happened to Kansas State against BYU last night, that being the latest substantial game on the map, and how Kansas State lost to BYU. I don't know. I saw one crazy play from that game. You got to watch this play. The BYU punt returner catches the ball basically running the wrong way. I don't know how it got kicked around. The highlight that I saw did not show it from the punt itself. So I don't know how and why he was picking the ball up, basically running the wrong way. He like scooped it up, headed toward his own end zone, and then he circled around and caught a wave and caught a wall of blocks, and boom, he was gone. It was a remarkable play. That one, and then, of course, the conclusion to the Colorado-Baylor game. Had to see what happened there. It was crazy that the Colorado wide receiver Shepard dropped. Now it was deflected. There was some distraction there in front of him by the DB who just whiffed on the football. So they're chucking it from the 50. Shedeur Sanders is heaving it from approximately the 50-yard line. And they got a receiver down at the goal line, and the Baylor defensive back had maintained contact with him, but then Shepard broke off, and there was some separation there, and the Baylor defensive back completely whiffed on the football. Reminds me of when you go shag fly balls and you've not done it in forever. This is at least what happens to me. They all land about 5 feet over your head because you do not track the football or the baseball correctly, and it takes off on you. So the Baylor defensive back just completely whiffed on the football, and it bounced right off of Shepard's chest and looked like they were probably going to lose the game. Well, the odds said that they were going to lose the game because they had another Hail Mary left with 2 seconds left. But what are the odds of hitting that? Well, Shedeur Sanders did make a remarkable throw rolling to his left, and he had a defender in his face, and he chucked that thing, and it really wasn't a, hey, here it is. Somebody's got to be down there. Chuck it up as high as you can and let it hopefully get tipped or fall into somebody's hands or somebody can high point the football. No, it looked like he had an intended receiver down there and he just threw a laser. It was quite impressive. So by the time I took all that in and kept going and worked on some things for the Fine channel here at the Voice of College Football, it was like I started working on my top 25 that actually makes sense. Bingo, it's 5:15 in the morning. Church is at 9:30. Usually wake up at 8:30, regardless of when I get done and when I get to bed on Saturday nights. Boom, got to get up for church. Got to tell you, though, I was like, exhausted. Not going to happen. So I'm going to sleep as long as I can. I will never sleep past 11 o'clock. So I did wake up at about 9:45 and thought, yeah, I'm safe. So I slept late, and I also, when I got up, I could not get the thing going as quickly as possible because the internet was not connected. So that delayed us as well. So we do appreciate you being here. And I know we have rambled through 11 minutes of non-football talk. Big winners on Saturday, week 4. Big winners. Michigan, of course. BYU, big winner. Arkansas, big winner. Really intrigues me to post a video with a stock market narrative to it. Who were the big surprises this year? Well, Illinois, BYU, Arkansas is really some horrible gaffes away from being 4-0. They should be 4-0. They outplayed Oklahoma State. They should be 4-0. Those are the first few that come to mind. Illinois, BYU. And then the big disappointments. Even though they won last night, Florida State is still the king of the list. They're still number 1. We used to do a bottom 10. I would do a bottom 10 every so often. That would not necessarily be the bottom 10 teams in the country, but it would be a combination of the very worst teams in the country with those teams that are just, you expect more, they're big programs, and they're just tanking. Or there was something kind of fun to analyzing their ineptitude. Like the Iowa offense was a staple in my bottom 10 for a few years. That was just automatic. Where am I going to rank the Iowa offense in the bottom 10? So it wasn't just strictly a particular, just these are the 10 worst teams in the country. No, there would be some nuance to it. There would be some fun facts in there. Like maybe this week, Nebraska would be in the bottom 10. They're not one of the 10 worst teams in the country, but they would be in the bottom 10 because we would analyze their pathetic record in 1-score games. and that would be a theme. I think we're going to do the bottom 10. Got to do the top 25 that actually makes sense. That's what took me as well, because I don't know when that's going to be out, because it gets more and more complicated, more and more complicated. Somebody has to possibly set up some kind of database for me. No, not a database, a formula. That's what needs to be set up for the top 25 that actually makes sense, because yes, it is not scientific. And then the more games they play, the more complicated it becomes. It doesn't change in my approach. My approach is the same. I want the best resumes at the top. Illinois is going to be clearly a top 10 team in the country, but it becomes more difficult to, I've got a grid where I put all the results of all the games. So after Michigan beats USC, then it becomes Michigan, and one of their wins is USC 3. And I put the point differential there. If it's an overtime win, I don't care what the point differential was. It's about you went to overtime, meaning you had a tie game during the 60 minutes. These two teams were even. It was a tie, but of course you credit the win to the winner. And then it's just basically trying to, I kind of slot them, eyeball it at first. I just eyeball it and say, well, USC was 3, put them 15 right now. And I do that and give it a structure of a proximity at first. And then I start to really wheel down to compare them versus them versus them versus them and their wins. And again, the wins from the past, they get changed. So a week 1 win, week 1 loss, that value changes as those teams get better or worse, or show themselves to be better or worse. All right, let's get to the phone lines. We got a caller. We got our buddy Keith showing up here. Keith, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. Always good to talk to you.
Good to hear from you, too.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the big win yesterday.
Oh, yeah. We're all proud of it. We were on to 2 a.m. yesterday. Had a good group.
Awesome.
Yeah. Doesn't that make Texas look even stronger?
Yes, it does. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Texas will probably be top of your 25 that makes sense for next few weeks then, eh?
Well, they were last week.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Tennessee went out there and played an exceptional game. I will say that. So
Yeah.
to measure Texas's 1 win against Tennessee's 2 wins, although NC State is horrendous. Yeah, that's a close call. Off the top of my head, I don't know that anyone else needs to be considered. I think it's those 2 teams.
Yeah. Is it North Carolina that Tennessee beat?
NC State.
Oh,
They beat
NC
Oklahoma
State
yesterday.
Oh, okay, yeah, NC State, yeah, because I thought North Carolina was better, yeah.
Well, they're both horrible this year.
Oh, they're both horrible? Or...
Well, North Carolina beat up on 3 bad teams. Well, one of the wins at Minnesota, last second field goal missed by Minnesota. So North Carolina should have lost that game. Then they beat up on 2 cream puffs, and then they got completely drubbed by James Madison yesterday. So, yeah, these teams should not be in the top 25, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Does the huge offensive line burst and defensive line burst by Michigan worry Ohio State Nation too much? You get any feelings on that yet?
Well, I don't get worried by anything. So that's just kind of an adage in life. Don't worry about anything. Doesn't do me any good. It's not productive. So I don't know about Buckeye Nation. I think they should be concerned. I don't know when you don't get concerned about a Michigan game, period. Even when you won 14 out of 15.
Yeah. 23. We're up at 23 straight now conference games.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And yeah, but looking at it from a football standpoint and less of a just being paranoid about a rivalry, absolutely. Michigan's pass rush, and we also have to understand, and this is something we can't calculate, we can't determine tangibly, but just because Michigan's pass rush was less effective against Texas, and we know Texas's offensive line is better than USC's. It might be the best in the nation. We don't know if Michigan improved. Maybe they improved. That happens as well. That's part of it. The simple conclusion is USC's offensive line isn't nearly as good as Texas's. Therefore, Michigan's defensive line looked better against just a good offensive line in USC, but not one of the best.
Yeah, but I would argue that was a noticeable improvement because we only got 1 sack and a few pressures against Arizona State. But I think we got 4 sacks and probably a dozen pressures against a better USC.
Yep, that was my first point. Yes, that we can gauge some type of improvement, even besides the Texas USC comparison. Yep, I agree with you. Oh yeah, they made life miserable for Miller Moss. For as talented as his receiver core is, and he is, and I really don't come away from that game thinking much less of him, maybe a little bit less of him because he did make some bad mistakes, but he was being harassed the whole day, beat up, thrown on the ground. Yeah.
He was limping around the field, and at one point he got hurt later in the game, and the medical staff came up to him and he shooed him away. He says, "Stay away from me. I'm staying in the game." I give him credit for that.
Yeah, I think USC is a good team.
Yeah, I think I give USC and Miller Moss a lot of credit. They were a tough team we played against. But do you remember the big mover discussion you had? More less or more than 3 wins.
Yes.
Remember, and I predicted my big mover in the Big Ten was Oregon. They would be down 3, and
okay.
and I thought the Big Ten line play was going to be a shock to those 4 teams that were coming in, and I think we saw a little bit against USC yesterday. They had like 5 or 6 injuries compared to our one. Actually, 4 or 5 because one guy was twice. 4 or 5 injuries to our 1 injury.
And what might be another point on your side is that USC really focused on strength and conditioning during the offseason. They stated that was their main focus as a program, especially along the offensive and defensive lines, that they had to get bigger, stronger, and be ready for this kind of schedule, these kind of opponents. I don't know if that's true with Oregon. I did not hear that in any such way out of Dan Lanning or anyone else that they changed their approach in any way to address that. So you could be right.
Yeah. Well, Oregon against Cupcake U has looked questionable, and I think 2 of their 3 Cupcake U games.
Yeah. And then they blew out Oregon State.
Yeah, and they just crushed Oregon State. Yeah. So we'll see, but I'll just leave with this: is that it's good to be excited U of M fan again.
Yeah, that kind of changes your season and your outlook. Absolutely. That was a big game, big win. And it was a unique win. I will say that as well. That formula doesn't work too well in college football usually, but it was what Michigan had to do yesterday.
Oh, no, there's one more point I wanted to make. Remember after the Michigan loss, DeReal came on your show and he pushed you. Is Michigan more likely to be 5-1 at Game 6 or 3-3 at Game 6? And you shocked them when you picked a 5-1.
Yeah, I don't know if that was DeReal. I know Steve Dace did the same thing to me.
Oh, Steve Days, that was DeReal. I remember DeReal did that
Steve
to you.
Dace did it as well, and he couldn't believe it. That is a great reminder, Keith, because I'm going to remind him of that this week if he has me on his show.
Yeah,
which I believe he will. So yeah, I thank you for reminding me of that because he asked me that after the Texas game. What is more likely, Michigan 5-1 or Michigan 3-3? And I said 5-1.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just say thank you for being fair, and I'll say goodbye and hang up and have a great rest of the show.
And by the way, Keith, I picked Michigan outright to win that game.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. And kudos to you for picking them. Yeah.
I
And
think all of your Michigan guys over there on the Michigan channel all picked USC.
including me on the call.
And I get it. It's not like I was super confident, but I kind of foresaw this kind of well, I was going to call it a mastermind move. I don't think that applies to Sharon Moore, but this kind of game plan just working. So
yeah, some people would say lucky SOB, right?
Could be. Khalil Mullings, yeah, and that offensive line and the defensive line. I think the defensive line was the biggest overall key with constant pressure. Khalil Mullings obviously was the man of the hour with that run on the final drive because there is no way they were going to pass the ball down the field to win that game.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree with you 100% today. Good job.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it.
All right. Always good talking to you. Go Blue.
Sounds good. We got Keith's approval. So we are off to a good start. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got our buddy Michael on the line. Michael, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. Good afternoon. How you doing, sir?
I am doing well. How are you?
After thinking about it for about 12 hours, I'm okay and stuff like that. But no, I mean, like, I'm still flabbergasted and stuff like that. But I mean, like, I'm still trying to figure out what Purdue got to do, stuff like that. The rushing game and stuff like that is good and stuff like that. But I digress. Anyway, you picked some teams that's doing pretty good, but I'm surprised you left IU off your list.
Well, I didn't make a list. I was just
the
grabbing teams off the top of my head. So
yeah,
if
that's
I was
what I'm
looking
saying,
at standings, I certainly would have grabbed Indiana. But I do have to say I would like to see them play somebody. So, for example, Illinois, Kansas, Nebraska, those are two solid wins. Yep. Indiana.
We'll find out next week against Maryland. Is Maryland an okay team or are they so?
I'll put them in that same bucket with Nebraska and Kansas.
But what happened with Kansas 3 in a row?
Yeah, they have lost 3 in a row. Well, they've played 3 capable football teams, and they lost 3 games down at the wire. It's not like it's not like you can walk away from any of those games and say the other team's better than Kansas. They just happen to lose the game.
Another thing, too, I was thinking about this earlier this morning and stuff like that. Do you think, I mean, like, this is Walter's second year at Purdue and stuff like that, so he still has some of the Brahms players, very little, because Brahm pretty much cleaned house. But do you think next year is going to be the watermark for Ryan Walters?
Yes, I do.
Year 3. He'll be able to get, because that's when he'll start getting his own players in, most likely, right? Or is that usually year 4?
No, year 3. You've got the opportunity to go to the transfer portal and change your team. So these coaches have less excuses than they did before.
Yep, I was just wondering stuff like that. Like I said, I think you brought some about NIL up last night too when we were talking.
Well, sure, that's a huge component in all of this now.
But why is it some schools have trouble and some don't? And I mean, and there's some big schools that have trouble that, I mean, they have decent teams, but they have trouble with NIL.
Well, let's look at any industry in America and any list of corporations or companies that operate in that industry and ask the question, why do some of them fail? Why do some of them succeed? And why are some somewhere in the middle? Well, resources, money, leadership, opportunities. Some of them just happen to be, some of it's just, I don't want to call it luck, but I just want to call it basically, where are you located? Who are you? If I just randomly picked up a phone, which of course this isn't the way to do it, but in the old days, and I was a Ohio State booster, an NIL rep versus a Purdue NIL rep, and I just cold called everybody in Columbus versus everybody in West Lafayette, how much more money do you think I would collect?
A lot more.
Yeah. So a lot of it's not Purdue's fault, but they are working from a deficit.
Now, if it was basketball, it'd be a different story. But I digress.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering stuff like that. No,
Although, so not to cut you off, yes, Purdue certainly has had a better basketball. I don't watch basketball. I haven't seen a basketball game in at least 10 years. But from what I know, Purdue has a better basketball program than Ohio State right now. Now, if you're talking through the decades, it's pretty close. You could have a big argument over who's been better. But in terms of that, and this is a credit to Purdue, Ohio State still has, from a basketball standpoint, they still operate a budget that's like top 5 or 10 in the country. So they still have more resources, even in that sport, than Purdue does.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're Purdue right now, how do you try to salvage or clean up what's been going on and stuff like that, so it's not a total train wreck where you're falling off the bridge?
Well, the first thing I do is I sit down with every position coach, and I sit down and I analyze every player on the 2 deep. And I say, okay, if this is the best guy we have, then this is the guy we're going to go with. That's fine. That's all we've got. But if this guy's backup is capable of maybe showing us something, and especially if he's younger, meaning we can develop him, then I would start making those swaps. I would be looking for senior position players. Now, if the senior is the best player at the position, he's still going to play. But if the senior at the position is struggling and there's no reason to continue to play him because it's just not going to help the program, then now I'm not going to throw somebody out there that's not ready. But if they've got a capable backup and that guy's a sophomore, then he's going to play for me.
Yeah, but the thing I'm trying to figure out, and I briefly touched on it last night, what is it with Graham Harrell? I mean, yeah, everybody thinks he got Terry, but is he not really a good offensive coordinator?
Well, he keeps getting jobs.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he gets jobs, but 2 or 3 years, he's getting fired and going on to other. What is that? What if there was one thing you could pinpoint about it? What would it be?
Well, we know what style he grew up in because the guy was one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the history of college football statistically. I'm not saying he was one of the best. Those are two different things. But yeah, Graham Harrell, let's look at his tenure as a coach. So after his playing days were over, he kicked around with the Packers and the Jets and didn't play. But then he went to, let's see, he never threw a pass in the NFL, it appears. No, he threw for 20 yards. Okay, so anyway, Oklahoma State grad assistant in 2009. So that's under Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy, excellent offensive coach, especially at that time with all the quarterbacks and wide receivers that they were recruiting. Then Graham Harrell goes to Washington State. He's there in 2014 and 15, and that was at the outset of Mike Leach's tenure. And of course, that's the obvious connection. That was his coach.
Yeah.
And Washington State started to turn it around, and Mike Leach was obviously a guy that turned around that program. Then he went to North Texas 2016, 17, 18. Now, I can't exactly tell you off the top of my head how good North Texas was during those years, but I believe they were pretty good because, shoot, I drew a blank on the coach's name. He just left about 2 years ago, but they had a good run there. USC 2019, 20, and 21. Of course, the COVID year was 20. So when he was at USC, they were awful. Well, 2019, they were okay. Then 2020, they only played 6 games. They were pretty good. They went to the Pac-12 championship game. 21, they were awful. Don't know that he had much to do with that. But, of course, Lincoln Riley took over the program, and he doesn't need a Graham Harrell. He's going to run the show.
Yeah, even though he shot him, even though there was times yesterday where Riley shot himself in the foot, but that's a different subject for a different day.
Yeah, but I don't know if anyone's going to question Lincoln Riley's play calling abilities. West Virginia 2022, and then Purdue. Well, I don't think that run of teams is any different than a lot of head coaches. It's a nomadic business where people move from job to job.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that I've been reading up on and stuff like that, that Mike Babinski, who's the athletic director at Purdue, made a mistake hiring Walters for the coaching period. But my thing I'm trying to figure out, is it 9-day difference with Illini when he was there at Illinois compared to Purdue, even though Illinois wasn't really that good when he was there as their defensive coordinator, in your opinion?
Well, he was there. Walters was there how many years?
I think 4, I'm not really sure.
So he was there in 22. 22 was his last year.
Mhm.
All right. So if he was there in 2019, so I don't know if Brett Bielema brought him with him or if he was already there. I got to think that he was a Brett Bielema hire.
Yeah, he was in Missouri for 3 years and then in Illinois for 2 years.
Oh, so if he was only at Illinois for 2 years, yeah, that was 2021 and 22.
In 2022, yeah.
Well,
And
they
he
had
was
the
in-
best. They had statistically the best defense in the country in 2020.
2, wasn't it? Yeah. But I think, did they finish 5-7 that year, though?
They went 8-4, and they were
Oh.
better than that. Well, they
Okay.
finished 8-5 after they lost a bowl game in the last seconds.
Mm-hmm.
They were a good football team in 2022, especially their defense. They were loaded. They were really good. They took Michigan to the final play. I think Bielema kind of messed that game up at the end. So anyway, my theory with head coaching hires is that if the guy's a defensive-minded guy that is proven to be a great coordinator, then obviously he can afford to hire a defensive coordinator that is an up-and-comer, can learn under him, but he has to get a super strong offensive coordinator because that's not his side of the football.
Mm-hmm.
So, a la Lincoln Riley's got to get a good defensive coordinator. Ryan Walters better get himself an excellent offensive coordinator.
Because I remember. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And you're right. There's nothing to tell us in his past that Graham Harrell's an excellent offensive coordinator. Basically, the only offense he's ever had that's been super productive was Mike Leach was the head coach. So I don't know how much Graham Harrell was doing.
Mm-hmm. But no, just like I remember when Ryan had his introductory press conference back in 2022, he said he's going to do an air raid offense. Yeah, you need a player and stuff like that, though. But I don't know, though. Maybe Carter isn't the right quarterback to do it or something.
Well, I don't think he is the right quarterback to do it.
Mm-hmm. Just wondering and stuff like that.
I think I told you that last night.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I haven't given up on the season yet, but.
Well, what are you hoping for, Michael?
Originally, I said before the season started 6-6, but they had to go 2-1 in the non-conference schedule. But now,
so when you tell us that you're not giving up on the season, I commend you for that. I don't want you to give up on the season, but I don't know what your goals are. So does not giving up on the season mean you're just going to watch the rest of the games, or you have a hope or expectation for this season?
I still have an expectation because I still think there's 4 winnable games left on their schedule. But the way they're playing right now, that's what I'm saying and stuff like that. I know Northwestern's won, Michigan State, I said Illinois, because I think Water will find their level, but the way they keep going, I don't know about that. But NIU, but like I said, got to find out what they're going to be doing in the next few weeks, though, and stuff that. So, because I said they'll either finish 6-6 or 4-8 this year, or 5-7. But as I said, we got to start playing better ball, play better football on the offensive side and stuff. Because the defense, man, if they're out there for 70 plays again this week against Nebraska, I think the defense is going to be done for the year.
Yeah, well,
because that's 200 plays in 3 games.
Sure. That was your claim last night, and I'm not saying that you're wrong because I don't think you're wrong. I agree with what you're saying. The offense and the defense have to complement one another, and especially if you're running some kind of air raid attack and it's not successful and it's a 3-and-out, well, you are now. See, there's a difference between running an air raid and the tempo of the offense. Those can be completely separated. People put them together. Now, most of the time they are put together in regards to if you run an air raid, you also want to run a high tempo offense because that's part of the approach.
Mm-hmm.
That you keep the defense on its heels by running at that type of tempo. But you could run an air raid offense and not have a high tempo offense. But what do you risk with a high tempo offense? Obviously, if you're not successful on a drive, you don't eat up any time and the defense is right back on the field. At least if you go 3 and out, or let's say you get a first down, plus you're running clock, and then you got a punt, at least you gave your defense a blow. So your point is well taken. Definitely the two go hand in hand, but I would also say that your defense giving up 70 plays in this game, I'm sure had to do with the offense going 3 and out all the time, but it probably, I'm guessing that Oregon State's third down conversion rate was pretty good. That would be
I think it was like 8 of 16.
Yeah, you want it to be more in the high 30s.
Yeah, but I will say this though, there was, I mean, maybe it's just products being tired, but there was Purdue's last couple games has just been missing tackles and stuff like that. But I wonder if it's just product of being on the field too long and not being able to wrap up or stuff. Or
when are they missing the tackles? Are they missing the tackles in the first quarter or the fourth quarter?
Mostly from like throughout the whole game.
Well, then there's a problem with tackling then.
Well, that too and stuff like that. But I'm sure every team's had issues and stuff like that. So, all right. So, where's your beloved Buckeyes at this weekend?
Where are they? They're
Where
going to East Lansing.
Interesting game, maybe, or you think it'll be a house cleaning again?
Oh, I think that their schedule sets up pretty well for playing a better team each week, and that's what's happened the first 4 weeks. So that's what they've got with Michigan State. So I'm looking at this Oregon State rushing attack here, 341 yards. Good Lord.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, I think Ohio State's, I'm not even considering them being upset this week, but Michigan State's not a bad team. They should have won the game at Boston College last night. But Aiden Childs got a little greedy and threw into double coverage at the end of the game, trying to win the game. I don't know why he was trying to win the game when it's first or second down, but anyway, that's what he did, and lost the game. But I guess Ohio State's probably a 25-point favorite.
Yeah, we'll see. I was wondering. So there was one other game I was going to ask you about. I can't remember what it was. Give me a second. I'm trying to remember. There's one other game I was going to ask you about. Oh, Tennessee for real.
What does for real mean?
I mean, are they a team that can actually win a national championship?
Ooh, a national championship. Yeah, they can win a national championship.
Just wondering stuff like that. All right, sir. I take too much time. Thanks for your call, and I will see you in the morning.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Have a good one. Take care.
You too. Can Tennessee win a national championship? I thought he was going to hit me with a playoff. That was going to be an easier question, obviously. I picked Tennessee to go to the playoff, right? Yes. I gave them one of the final spots. The worst playoff prediction I have made to date would be, well, yeah. In terms of an at-large, yeah, I'd have to go back and look at my playoff predictions. They could be pretty ugly, although there's about 4 or 5 that are pretty rock solid, I would think. We'll see. We'll see if USC can jump up, bounce back, if Michigan's going to carry this through. I did have Michigan in the playoff, though. All right. There was something that Michael said that sparked my interest. But anyway, Tennessee, yeah, because for me, quarterback, check. Running game, check. Offensive line, check. Receiver, check. The defense may have the first player taken in the NFL draft, James Pierce. Really, the defense has just a question in the secondary, and in facing Grayson McCall and Jackson Arnold, they have not faced anybody that's able to challenge their secondary. No. So we'd like to see Tennessee play somebody like Alabama. That's coming up. of course. Don't know who else they have on their schedule, but it's always that, well, I'd like to see them play them or them or them or them. That's going to show us something, because Tennessee's defense has not been challenged. Oklahoma's offense, they've gotten beat up and their quarterback's bad. Their quarterback is just making horrible decisions. So their quarterback's not playing well. I kind of hate that the sport has gone in this direction where the quarterback is so emphasized, because I don't think I think it becomes a bit, I don't know. I would rather have a more balanced game, not from a viewing standpoint necessarily, but just where the quarterback, there's so much put on the quarterback, and the determination of how good the team is. I guess we could go from season to season and see if what I'm talking about truly plays out, but I'm guessing that it would. That if we listed the best quarterbacks in the country, and then we listed the best teams in the country, and we could rank the quarterbacks 1 through 135, and then rank the teams 1 through 135, that the quarterback and the team would line up fairly close. Okay, your aberrations this year. Well, Michigan is going to be your number one aberration that I can think of off the top of my head. And then there's probably some NFL quarterback out there who's toiling away for somebody in obscurity, but I don't even know who that would be. Look at teams that struggle right now, teams that have talent but struggle. Florida State, Auburn, they don't have quarterbacks. Colorado's completely elevated by Shedeur Sanders. If Colorado had a quarterback who was in line with the rest of the team, the talent or the status of the rest of the team, they'd be horrendous. They would be terrible. Any other aberrations out there? Typically, Iowa's an aberration, and their team is better than their quarterback. But we've seen the last 3 years, 4 years, where Iowa's been way better than their quarterback. They have had to completely outplay their quarterback, completely make up for horrible quarterback play. Now they have to make up for, and I wanted to see Iowa, Minnesota last night, but the way things broke and looking at other games, I really didn't take anything from that game. I got to go back and look at it before Tuesday's Iowa show. But Cade McNamara does not impress me in the least. Now let's see what he did last night. So there's a team where just competent quarterback play, merely competent quarterback play, has made a difference. Let's see what we got out of Cade McNamara. Here we go. This is exactly what I was expecting to see. And they didn't need anything out of him. And it's a good thing that they didn't. Cade McNamara is basically showing me week to week that he's really not a good player. He's okay. He's all right. How many quarterbacks in the Big Ten would you take in front of Cade McNamara? Just about all of them. Maybe you take Cade McNamara over Billy Edwards at Maryland. Maybe. I don't know. I think I'm taking Will Howard. If you put Cade McNamara back in the Michigan offense, Michigan would love to have Cade McNamara back. If Michigan had Cade McNamara back, for as marginal and mediocre as he is, and he is not a good quarterback, my estimation and my evaluation of Cade McNamara has leveled off considerably in the last couple of years. I thought Cade McNamara was a pretty decent quarterback in 2021. Today, my evaluation of Cade McNamara, he's a bottom 3 or 4 quarterback in the Big Ten. The Minnesota quarterback's better. the old Minnesota quarterback, now at Rutgers, Ethan Kalkumanis, is better. But so he's better than Orji. Yes. And it would be one thing if Alex Orji was Lamar Jackson on the run or Michael Vick, but he's not. So we may have seen Michigan's best game of the year. We may have seen this is the pinnacle. This is the recipe that they put together that actually worked against this team. And what happened yesterday can also work in reverse, meaning Michigan steps out there against teams that they should level. And because they can't throw the ball, they get into a rock fight. And if the wrong things break in a certain way, then they're going to lose to somebody that they shouldn't lose to. So I know there's euphoria over the Michigan win, and there should be. They did not look like they were going to win that game. I still picked them to win the game against all logic. But what their defensive front did is what I expected. That was the big key in this entire game. That's what I was riding on, is that Michigan's defensive line was going to harass Miller Moss and that they were going to overwhelm the USC offensive line in pass pro. And that's what happened. And that's what eked out a win and 3 running plays. But Michigan, if they don't improve their passing game to make it at least, I don't even know what to call it. My goodness, I think each week I would give Alex Orji about 3 pass plays to work on, and we would rep it over and over and over. I know he can throw that little swing pass to the running back or the wide out. That's the inside receiver, the guy in the slot. I know he can throw that pass. I've seen him throw it. I think I can still throw that pass. The last time I threw a football was Christmas time, and I could still chuck it about 40 yards. So I think I can still throw that pass. Now, I might be a little wild from time to time, but give me a week out there with the Michigan football team. I think I can take a snap, and I can throw the ball out to the flat. I can throw the ball from the middle of the field to the right hash or a little bit beyond and hit that guy and let him run, typically for like 1 yard. How many times was Michigan throwing these passes where they needed like 3rd and 8 and they're throwing the ball out to a nondescript wide receiver who is not exactly the second coming of Percy Harvin and expecting him to break like 14 tackles to get a first down because they can't throw the ball. So while that recipe came together, thanks to Will Johnson, thanks to Khalil Mullings, thanks to the offensive line run blocking, and thanks to Josiah Stewart and others, that also can work in reverse. That also can be a situation where they're showing up against, pick your team, Minnesota or whomever, and if they load up on the run, what are all those teams scouting right now? Who's Michigan got next week? I think it's Minnesota. So they're going to be playing from a strategy deficit in all these games. So that was a great win, and they pulled off their recipe. But man, I don't know if when we look at their schedule, okay, Minnesota's a bad football team. Oh, that's the big noon kickoff? Minnesota at Michigan? Really? That's what they're giving us this Saturday. Yikes. Is there no better game in the Big Ten? Is there no better game in the Big Ten this week than Minnesota and Michigan? Minnesota's not a good team. Minnesota had a bunch of inflated stats based on playing a marginal, I'm being kind, an awful schedule, and they're just not a good football team. They've got a running back. They've got a decent quarterback. They've got one receiver. They've got some pieces on defense. They got mauled up front. When Michigan goes to Washington, Will Rogers might be able to put up some points on that defense. He's a very accomplished quarterback. They've got Jed Fish, who's a very accomplished offensive coach, offensive mind. This game at Illinois, is Michigan going to be able to play like that against Illinois? Is Illinois going to just, oh man, Illinois, I tell you what, I came away against Nebraska is that Illinois has got a great secondary. Now, does that matter against Michigan? Not unless they change significantly in the next few weeks. So they may want to give all those guys a week off and just play more linebackers or something. What would that be? I'd play like a 4-6-1 defense. Or I'd play a bear front, which was the 46. Same thing. All right, Michigan State, they're showing themselves capable. They should not have lost to Boston College last night. They did. They blew it. Their young quarterback made an errant throw, bad decision, which cost them the game at the end. I did not see the first three quarters to see who was the better team playing better between BC and Sparty. But in the fourth quarter, Michigan State was clearly the better team, playing much better. They did. Well, here you go. They gave up the game-winning touchdown play on a bomb in which the receiver completely lost the Michigan State DB. I don't think he fooled him. I don't think he blew coverage. He just was the better man. Well, Michigan's not going to do that. And then we won't even get into Oregon because that's a whole different level of football. That's a whole different level of opponent as it stands right now. But see, Michigan fans should be elated over this win. It was a great win. It was a great win. USC's a good team. Let's not make them out to be Pete Carroll's, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart USC teams by any stretch. They beat LSU on the last play of the game. How good's LSU? Well, they're another team that's a good team. 8-4, maybe 9-3. LSU was tied with UCLA at home yesterday. They lucked out in beating South Carolina. They really just lucked out. They were a lucky football team. Now they came back, credit them with the win, but they were pretty fortunate in that game. But I see a run of opponents here, even before Oregon. I see 4 consecutive opponents that, unlike the Michigan of 2021, 22, 23, if they would have looked at those 4 opponents, of course, Washington was not in the Big Ten. It was going to be 52-7, 45-10, and 38-9. Those were going to be the 3 scores of the next 3 opponents. But these 4 before Oregon, Minnesota's the worst team out of the 4, and they're not, like I said, I called them a bad football team the other day, but they'll go out there with scholarship athletes, and I think it's a challenge. It's somewhat of a challenge. And the way Michigan plays, this game could be 17-10 in the fourth quarter, and Minnesota can actually throw the ball. Their quarterback's good. He's capable. Again, they don't have many receiving threats, so I would expect between Michigan's pass rush and Michigan's secondary that's going to be the problem with the Minnesota quarterback, Brosmer, because he's a good quarterback. He's a decent quarterback. He's a mid-level Big Ten quarterback. So yeah, this Michigan formula is going to be interesting to see it play out against these teams. And I think that Illinois game now becomes a real challenge. That Washington game, traveling out there, Washington gave up 5 points to Northwestern yesterday. Now, much of that has to do with Northwestern, of course. All right, let's get to these super chats. We do appreciate those. Erica chiming in on this one. Erica, thank you so much for the super chat. Kate is getting saved by Caleb Johnson, the best running back in the country. Okay. We'll put that to the side for a second. As I said before, this is not your grandpa's Cade McNamara. Go Hawks. Well, in terms of results, passing results, it is not your grandfather's Cade McNamara, but this is still the same guy. This is the same guy. Maybe he's lost a little bit because of injuries. Kirk Ferentz says that he's still working his way back. I don't see this length of time being a factor in other guys working themselves back. I just don't see it out of other players and quarterbacks in particular that have had to come back from injury, that by game 4, that it's still, well, he's rusty. Yeah. I hate to go on a rant or just pick apart these teams, but I guess that's why I'm here, that should have made much different quarterback decisions. And not being hypocritical here, because I'm not just coming up with this now. I was saying this all off season. I was saying this about Iowa. I was saying this about Auburn. I was saying this about Michigan, that they're making bad quarterback decisions. I would love to have been at Iowa practice all of August and since the season started. I would love to have been at practice to see, what are we looking at here? What are we looking at that Cade McNamara's got that is so much better than Brendan Sullivan? To me, they're the same guy, but Brendan Sullivan's more mobile. Cade McNamara, quarterback the team, 1 year, that had one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best offensive lines in the country, an excellent running back in Hassan Haskins, and an excellent backup in Blake Corum, and capable wide receivers, excellent tight end play. And the only time that I ever remember Cade McNamara really lifting an offense, 2 times, 2 occasions. One was his big breakthrough in 2020 against Rutgers, where he pretty much saved the day and took over for Joe Milton and pulled out a game in overtime. Played well, threw the ball all over the place, and there you go. He broke through, and he might have saved Jim Harbaugh's job. And maybe that's why Jim Harbaugh was so loyal to him. And so then in 2021, Cade McNamara won the job after winning the job over the last couple of weeks of 2020. And he turned in a nice season. But again, he was surrounded by all of that reinforcement of, you don't have to score that many points. You don't have to throw the ball that many times. When you do, be efficient. And many times those wide receivers would break tackles in the open field and make a 12-yard pass into a 35-yard pass. So Cade McNamara had a nice season in 2021, but it was boosted by his teammates. Now, in terms of Caleb Johnson being the best running back in the country, I know statistically he is. He's worked his way into the conversation. I would not take Caleb Johnson first off the board of running backs, but I think he's doing the job. He's having a tremendous season, of course. I don't know what his numbers were yesterday. We had them right here. He ran for 206. There you go. Well, he had a remarkable game. I didn't pay attention as much to the game as I anticipated that I would. But yeah, statistically, you are right, Erica. Caleb Johnson is the best running back in America. But a lot of that has to do with the offensive line, of course. There were people telling me that Ollie Gordon was the best running back in the country last season. And I said, well, he's a great running back and he's leading the nation in rushing. He's the rushing champion, but I don't consider him to be the best running back. There are better running backs. And now Ollie Gordon is struggling mightily because the offensive line's not doing the job. And the passing game that's another team right there, Oklahoma State. They're having issues at quarterback. So thank you for that, Erica. And then we've got Adam. Mark, Deacon Hill was benched last night during Utah Tech's loss to UC Davis. I would like to do a Utah Tech show. Well, Adam, if you want to start a Utah Tech show, then you can audition for one and we will put it on here. If it's just, if you're going to make us money, Adam, laughing at Utah Tech and Deacon Hill, then we'll consider that. I'm sure it will be entertaining. I think you've got better things to do with your time, Adam. You can be masterminding college football and coming up with more proposals. And here we've got DK Fishing and Outdoors. Thank you so much for the contribution. That's very kind of you. What you're saying about it, Michigan is 100% accurate, but you forgetting UM's D-line made Miller Moss play equivalent to orgy. Okay. All right, sir. I don't know when you joined the chat, but I could not have been clearer about Michigan's defensive line. So we posted a video after the game. I don't expect that you saw that, but just in this hour and 5 minutes, I think I've said more about Michigan's defensive line than just about anything else outside of the quarterback position. So I have restated, I said that was the number one reason they won the game. I said also is the number one reason why I picked Michigan to win the game is because I expected their defensive line to do what it did against USC's offensive line. So I'm not forgetting. I do forget things from time to time. Believe me, I do forget things, but I did not forget about Michigan's defensive line. I've been talking about them for the last half hour. So thank you for your contribution. Again, I don't always know when people join the chat. So maybe my defensive line comments were before that. Well, let's not go crazy here on the second statement. Made Miller Moss play equivalent to Alex Orji. Whoa. Hey, hang on. Whoa. I don't think any quarterback in the nation played equivalent to Alex Orji, first of all. Miller Moss produced 283 yards and 3 touchdown passes, and they were legitimate touchdown passes. Well, one of them was a gift because the guy was wide open. Now, I don't know if I could make that pass. I know I could, but it would have had a ton of air under it because you got to think Miller Moss threw like a 15-yard touchdown pass to Jay Fair that probably traveled 25 yards in the air. Yeah, I'd have to put a little bit of air under that, but still the dude was wide open. I could have thrown that touchdown pass too. But the shot to the guy on 3rd and 16 to, I believe, Kyron Hudson between the two defenders. No, Miller Moss is impressive. He got beat up and he was still delivering the ball. Made a couple bad mistakes, made one in particular, of course, but I don't know where you're getting the Moss to Orji comparison. No, Miller Moss might be the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Alex Orji is the worst quarterback in the Big Ten. There's my comparison. Keelani, Did they ever actually do an Indiana show? Yeah, we told you that we're doing an Indiana show. And it debuts this Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe we're going to put that over on the new Indiana channel, of course, and on the Big Ten channel. Did you know we've got a Big Ten channel? I got to admit, I don't even know what's over there. It's been so many different versions of channels at this point. I don't even know what it is at this point. Well, I know that there's Big Ten content on it, and we're going to put the Indiana show over there. Kate is better than Orgy. Yes. Erica, is Jeffrey going to lead the Indiana channel? Well, that's one way of putting it, but technically, no. I'm going to be leading the Indiana channel. Our guy, TJ, our operations manager, he's basically in charge of the Indiana channel. So Jeffrey's going to be hosting on the Indiana channel. He's going to have a show that he hosts. But so, yes, that is going to be the deal there. So we're excited about that. Look at Jackson. Jackson's on top of it. So where were we? We were on top of this Indiana, or I'm sorry, not Indiana. We're not going to talk about Indiana. I've got nothing to say about Indiana. I'm impressed with their start. I've not seen any of it. I watched a little bit against UCLA, but I'm impressed with the Indiana start for one specific reason. One easy comparison to make is that Indiana, in previous seasons, Indiana could be 4-0 right now. They still could be 4-0 because their schedule has just been that bad that, let's say, the 20, 22, or 23 Indiana teams, I'm guessing would be 3-1 right now. I'm guessing they would have lost at UCLA. They would have found a way to lose at UCLA. And UCLA played pretty well for one half down in Death Valley on Saturday. But Indiana could be 4-0 right now. But they would not have pummeled opponent 1 and opponent 2 and UCLA and whoever they played yesterday. That was Charlotte. They would not have pummeled those teams. They don't pummel anyone, but they are playing extremely well. And they got Curtis Rourke at quarterback from Ohio University, the Fighting Bobcats. The one-time Frank Soliches, and now the Tim Albans at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. But I'm looking forward to watching Indiana play. Since they're playing Maryland this week, that sounds like a Big Ten Network game. I don't know. We will look at that one, and hopefully I get a chance to see the Hoosiers this week, possibly move to 5-0. So Indiana's much improved. Much improved. They were the worst team in the Big Ten last year, right? Was anyone worse? No, they were the worst team in the Big Ten last year. Now they look like they're better than Purdue, better than Northwestern, better than UCLA, of course, better than those three for sure. And then probably in that realm of Maryland, Minnesota, and maybe a couple other teams I can't think of right now. And possibly could show us to be in that range of Wisconsin, Nebraska, Michigan State. They might be on that level. All right. Which reminds me, if I get around to it this week, we'll do Big Ten power rankings. We will do all the conference power rankings. And I just started to do my comparisons late last night when I was up till after 5 a.m. on the various conferences. So that's all I've come up with right now. So ACC is 37-11 in non-conference play and 8-9 against the other conferences. And the Big 12 is 33-10 and 5-8 against the other conferences. Let's see. The Big 10 is 42-10, and the Big 10 had a lousy day yesterday, and I anticipated that. UCLA lost at LSU. Michigan State lost at Boston College. Rutgers did beat Virginia Tech. I thought there was another one in there somewhere. Another non-conference game. And then we've got the SEC. Sorry, best conference. I wish it was debatable. 38-9, 38-8, 9-6, and by far the best wins. All right, let's get Erica in here to talk up her beloved Hawkeyes. Hi, Erica.
Hi. I'm going to talk them up and also talk them down. So this is going to be a bit of a, double-sided call, I guess.
Sure.
So first of all, Minnesota sucks. They're poverty. FTB. That's what I have to say about them. They thought they were going to beat us. We went and got Floyd back. First half looked horrendous on Iowa's part for sure. But that second half, we killed them. That's it. That's all there is to it. We dominated them again at their house. So
I would agree based on what little I saw and based on the stats and the score and everything else. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I know the yardage was ridiculous.
Yeah, the 206 by Caleb, like you said.
But I saw a yardage stat in the second half, and Iowa had like 211 to 14. Yes, Iowa blew them off the field. Yes. Minnesota, it appeared, had what, 2 touchdown drives right at the end of the first half that were
That's
pretty
right.
impressive. And then after that, before that, nothing. After that, nothing. Iowa's defense dominated, and the running game was dominant.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. So that was nice to see, but I've still got concerns because God forbid we have more than, Caleb or Jazz Patterson or one of our other running backs. Like, God forbid they get injured. We're kind of screwed because Cade can't pass the ball to save his life pretty much at this point. And I have to say, I don't understand. There's some Iowa fans. I'm not on this channel, like on one of the message boards I frequent for Hawkeye fans. There's some fans who are just so against giving Sullivan a chance. And I just don't understand it. I'm sorry if any people who are Hawkeye fans or Sullivan fans who are watching, or Cade fans who are watching, who doesn't think that Sullivan deserves a chance, you're delusional. I'm sorry. His mobility alone would give us another dimension to our game. It's ridiculous. Like, I just don't understand why we wouldn't give him a chance. If he doesn't do well, what happens? Okay, put him back on the bench and just bring him out for the red zone like they've been doing. That's fine. But give him a chance. Like, Minnesota last night would have been a perfect opportunity again to, maybe the fourth quarter to give him a chance. What they did is the last 2 minutes or last minute and a half, they brought him out and he didn't do great. But that's one series, not even a full series. So I just don't understand that. And then the other thing I'm going to say is and it's related again, but the passing attack is like nothing. There is none. It's just like Michigan. Same exact stuff. Like, there's zero passing attack. We have to completely rely on our running backs to do everything. And then for our defense and our special teams to bail us out, which, by the way, our special teams looked much better last night, thank the Lord, because that was not Iowa standard special teams before yesterday night. That was a relief to see. But we need to get a quarterback who can actually pass a ball. And I think that once Tim Lester is there for a bit longer and we start getting more of his guys, I think we'll see a difference.
Well, I think you summed up quite a bit there. My response would be, I think you've joined us enough during the offseason to know that I'm right on there with you. So I was clamoring for Iowa to pick up a transfer quarterback, and I was a bit disgruntled when they didn't in the portal window when there were more quarterbacks available. So when they picked up Brendan Sullivan, I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought that was great. Okay, so now if you have an injury situation, then you have a capable backup who has proven that he can win games in the Big Ten. Plus, you've got a competition. Your quarterback's not so good that you can't have a competition. He's not Drew Aller, Miller Moss, whomever, that you can say, well, he's definitely the starting quarterback. You're bringing in a quarterback who has proven to be just as good. You've got a quarterback in Brendan Sullivan who's thrown 200 passes as a Big Ten quarterback, and he's completing 69% of his passes. So I don't get that either. And then we were hearing more and more about, well, Cade couldn't practice in the spring, and so he's still having injury issues. And every time I've heard Kirk talk about it versus Tim Lester, the next point is that they obviously had a struggle trying to determine the quarterback because they didn't make a decision until about 10 days before the season started. So by all accounts, it was a great competition in camp. And to your point, Brendan Sullivan is more mobile. So if he's passing just as well as Cade McNamara, then he gives you that added dimension. And just in trying to interpret what Kirk was saying, and Corey backed me up on this one the other day, is that Kirk, when he talks about Cade's qualities, he goes back to Michigan all the time, that he showed us this at Michigan, he showed us that at Michigan, and we're waiting to see this guy. Well, that was 3 years ago.
That's crap. And that's why I keep making that comment about how it's not your grandfather's McNamara, because it isn't. It just
and the
isn't.
couple comments and the couple interview sessions I heard with Tim Lester late in August, leading into the season, he was much more complimentary of Brendan Sullivan. He was talking about he has excellent pocket presence. He makes great decisions, on and on and on and on. He's a great worker and all these things. And I thought, well, he doesn't have to say those things. He could just say, he's competing and he's progressing. He could just say the generic things that basically mean he's just another guy. But he was very detailed in his praise for Brendan Sullivan. And you probably caught this during the many shows, is that my suggestion was to play them both in the games that that they're going to win, and to play them during meaningful minutes, not just mop up, because you mentioned Sullivan coming into the game yesterday, but he didn't throw a pass. So that
what happened is they came back and got him, they sacked him. So.
Oh, okay.
But it was like a minute and a half left. And it's just, I don't know. So I'll make a comment on what you just said about the two quarterbacks, like, alternating them in and out. I agreed with you. I thought that was a good idea. However, we know that Kirk Ferentz doesn't do that stuff. He just doesn't. Now, I don't think that at that point, and still maybe you could argue that Tim Lester maybe was, quote unquote, established enough at Iowa for him to fully put his 2 cents in, because for all we know, part of the reason, and I haven't heard this anywhere, but I'm starting to think about it now that we're having this discussion, could it be that the reason we didn't have a quarterback until, I think it was even less than 10 days before the season actually, part of the reason we didn't have the quarterback determined until late is because maybe, is it possible that Kirk and Tim couldn't agree on who to put out there or how to go about it?
Well, that's kind of what I was conjecturing without knowing that for sure.
Yeah, that's what I think happened, because I think that Kirk is actually letting Tim Lester have quite a bit of control, but I think there's these certain things that for whatever reason Kirk will not let up on, and one of them is the fact that he thinks Cade is God. And I think, I don't know, is it that we gave him all this NIL money and that he got a tampering violation because of it, that he won't step down on it, or what?
Well, people have loyalties, and that's a good quality to have. He should be loyal, but it can't be misguided loyalty.
He's loyal to a fault.
Yeah. There are 2 players here who are only one can play, and I certainly was not recommending that they play 2 quarterbacks for the entire season, but I thought that they had a pocket there early in the season that they could have played both of them, made a determination. Cade McNamara already went through this situation a couple of years ago at Michigan. He was the incumbent from the year before, but everybody, including myself, and I remember having conversations with Corey, and he was like, well, Cade McNamara did what he did last year, winning the Big Ten championship. How do you know that JJ McCarthy's that much better? And I was like, just watch. So they put him out there both for 3 games, let him play equal amounts of time, and J.J. McCarthy proved to be 10 times better.
Right.
And so Cade McNamara was on the bench.
Right. Right. And that's what a true quarterback competition is. And you're 100% correct. We were fortunate in that we had that opportunity to try, do like auditions, I guess, in a way for the quarterbacks, because we also know, thanks to P-Trash, that you can be the best practice quarterback in the world, but suck on game day. Because he keeps trying to say that about Cade too, that he's good in practice and that. And I'm just like, I don't care. You know what? I don't care. I want to see what he does on the field during game time.
Exactly.
That's garbage. I'm sorry. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about too, and this is going to be my last comment, I'm also concerned, even though we won pretty convincingly yesterday, I'm still very concerned about the fact that we can't seem to play a 4-quarter game. In every single game this year, it's been one half is good, and then the second half is garbage, or vice versa, every single game. And if we want to beat a team like Ohio State, we have to play all 4 quarters. If we want to have a chance to even beat them, we have to play all 4 quarters. So I'm concerned about that. I know a lot of Iowa fans are concerned about that as well. But again, on the board that I'm on, the message board for Hawkeye fans that I frequent, it seems like a lot of people forgot about that criticism because we won convincingly against Minnesota, who's a poverty team. So we better have won convincingly, by the way. And I'm going to keep saying that. And Minnesota Dave, I'm sorry if you're listening, but even you came on Corey's show last night admitting like that Minnesota looked horrible. So I'm going to keep saying it.
Yeah, Minnesota could have a pretty bad record when it's all said and done. Their next 3 or 4 games are not pretty.
Yeah. I mean, it's Minnesota. Okay, who are they going to get besides PJ Fleck? If PJ were fired or decided to go elsewhere, which we know on the offseason that he did try to go to UCLA, we kept hearing that rumor. So we know there's something there. I think Minnesota will be in a bit of a bind because I don't know who they could get. Who are they going to get that's going to go to Minnesota?
Oh, they would have to make the kind of hire that Purdue made. Go get Ryan Walters, a guy that's inexperienced, a guy that just excelled on one side of the ball as a coordinator, and try to build from there.
I guess. I mean, what other choice would they have, right?
Exactly.
Because they're just, part of it too is where they are. Like a big difference between Minnesota and Iowa is that in Iowa, they don't have NFL teams or, professional sports. So by default, Iowa and Iowa State are the teams in the state, so they get a lot more attention. Whereas with Minnesota, you've got the Vikings, you've got all the other, there's like, I think it's 4th or 5th on the docket of Minnesota teams that people watch or pay attention to who are in Minnesota. So like, that makes it harder too, I guess. I don't know. I don't see why people can't be fans of multiple teams though. So I've always found that reasoning a bit curious.
Well, I'm not up there, but as I understand it, that unless Minnesota is a really, really good, and when are they really, really good? Never.
I was going to say, what are you talking about? Really, really good Minnesota?
They had 3 straight years under PJ, were 11-2, 9-4, 9-4. So, but I mean, even they need to be even better than that because, as I understand it, sure, they're a big time college football team, so they still have 50,000 people or more at the games, and people are going to watch on TV. But the majority of those people watching on TV, they could be watching from anywhere in the country. And they've got to be playing somebody like Iowa or Wisconsin to get a good crowd on TV. Otherwise, they're playing on FS1 or they're playing on the Big Ten network. That there's more attention, as I understand it from talking to Minnesota people, there's more attention given to the Vikings on Saturday and just talking about their game on Sunday than there is in watching and analyzing the Minnesota college team.
Yeah. And since you mentioned Wisconsin, man, they've got a tough road. I don't know what they're doing up there. I like Madison as a city. I've been there a few times. I live like 90 minutes away, but it's like, man, you have a head coach who has one philosophy or a classic Wisconsin philosophy, with running the ball and that. And then you hire an offensive coordinator who wants to throw air raid. So I don't understand the disconnect there. Like when you go against DNA like that, that's a huge task. And I think they kind of made a mistake. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the most knowledgeable about Wisconsin football, but I'm kind of interested in hearing about what happened there.
Well, I think that if you watch them play and their approach, they are trying to make that transition. So they were at least smart enough to know that they couldn't be a run first play action team that was, uh, again, just centered around the tailback position and being what Wisconsin's always been since Barry Alvarez, that they couldn't just flip a switch, that they didn't have the right personnel on their roster, and that players cannot learn a whole different scheme that's completely on the opposite end of the spectrum immediately. So what has transformed is you have kind of elements of both. They're kind of in the middle somewhere. So they have not fully committed to either one, and they're trying to make this transition to an air raid. But I think the big issue that I can't believe that Luke Fickell wouldn't think of this. So I got to think that he has, but he has still decided with this air raid to go forward, is that the reason Wisconsin was so successful for so many years is that they knew who they were and they knew what part of the country they played in from the standpoint of weather, which I don't think is a huge factor at the time that the college football season plays, but still, it's more of a factor in Wisconsin than almost anywhere in probably anywhere in the country where there's a big time college football program. So they do play 2 or 3 games at the end of the year where there could be a weather factor, where they have thrived running the football 80 some percent of the time and playing those kind of games. Number 2, they drew on their recruiting base, which when they're recruiting and signing players in Iowa and Wisconsin and the upper Midwest, well, they're bringing in 300-pound offensive linemen and leaning on them, and they're producing NFL offensive linemen 3-4 years later. And I just don't know if they're going to have access to the kind of players that have the speed and quick twitch ability to run that kind of offense.
I don't think so either. I mean, if Iowa ever tried to do it, it would be a similar thing where they probably couldn't. It's the same DNA, it's an upper Midwest team. So I don't know. I know I'm criticizing Iowa right now for not passing well and stuff like that, but there's a big difference between just not passing well, but trying to make your entire offense based on, air raid and throwing. And that's what Wisconsin's trying to do. And I just don't see it being successful. It's someone else said, I think it was keep chopping. That's going to take years for them to, to fix it. I agree with that 100%. I don't even know if they're going to get there.
Yeah, so I agree with both that if they're going to get there, it's going to take them years to fix it. But your last comment may be the final result, that they never get there because they come to the realization that I just pointed out. And I'm not saying that that's fact. I'm just saying that there's a reason that since the early 90s, when Barry Alvarez took over and broke through and they became a dominant team in the Big Ten, that they have gone a certain direction. They have relied on front 7 on defense and an offensive line, and have been able to get at least one, if not a stable of 2 or 3 excellent running backs. And they get a quarterback who's just good enough to hit an open receiver on 3rd down or when they need it about 15 times a game.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting time though in the Big Ten right now. And yeah, there's a lot of different little storylines, and I think that makes it really fascinating this season. And it's hard. The conference is so big that it's hard to watch everybody. Like there's too many games.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to watch some of the new teams, and I haven't gotten to watch more than highlights for most of them. I did catch the USC Michigan game. That was something.
Yeah.
That was something.
Sure was.
I actually thought USC would win. I didn't think it would be a big blowout or anything, but I thought they would win, and I was wrong. So there's that, but it was close. They almost did pull it off, and
That was a great game.
It was a fantastic game. And what I kind of find funny is it's almost like a classic Big Ten football game, even though classically what USC does is not Big Ten football type of stuff. So I thought that was fascinating. It almost felt like Lincoln Riley was pulling a PJ Fleck and trying to beat Michigan at what they do, just like PJ Fleck tries to do to Iowa.
Well, they did throw it 51 times. So you did have
Yeah,
two
that's true,
very
I guess.
contrasting styles out there.
Yeah, but it still looked very like one in the trenches type of game, though. Even though the passing number may have been higher than you would think. I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
I watched another podcast or another YouTube video talking about how USC has only been able to be successful because Lincoln Riley brings in Heisman quarterback after Heisman quarterback after Heisman quarterback, and he was making the argument that that might be over. And so I think it's going to be an interesting storyline to follow. I personally can't judge. I don't know enough about USC. I've only seen the one game against Michigan this year, so I can't judge, but I thought that was an interesting comment.
yeah. Well, it sounds like conjecture to me. I don't know that did he have a reason to believe that this is going to stop?
Well, he just thinks that the USC quarterback isn't it. Miley Moss, right? That's his name?
That this particular quarterback is not it?
Right. That's what he seemed to be arguing. And again, I'm saying this is someone who I'm not knowledgeable about USC. I'm not claiming to be, but that was his argument. And I was like, that's interesting. And then he also tried to make the point that the defense was the USC defense, I mean, was not as good as some people maybe think. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, they almost did beat Michigan. But then again, Michigan this year is not what Michigan was last year either. So I don't know how much of a comment that is either, you know?
Well, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. USC is a really good football team. Are they a great team? Probably not. They're not a great team. They have their deficiencies.
Do you think they're going to end up staying ranked so high or by the end of the season or not?
I think USC is going to finish somewhere around the top 15.
Okay. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I really don't know a lot about USC. And like I said, I would like to watch more Big Ten football, but there's just too many games. I mean, I wish they would have thought of that before becoming this mega league. Like I used to feel like I had a lot better of a handle of what's happening in the Big Ten and what's going on around the conference, but now it's impossible.
Well, the other change is not just the number of teams, but the way it's divided or not divided is that so somebody like yourself, I'm just taking as a guess here, is that you were trying to be able to watch the entire league, but you were obviously more focused on the Big Ten West because those were the teams that you had to fight through to get to a Big Ten championship game, where now it's just there's no priority or weight given to whether you're in the West or the East because they're all the same. Everybody's mixed up and in one column.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I did pay more attention to the Big Ten West since that's who our main competition was, but I did watch around the conference too, and now it's just too many teams. It's too challenging. And Adam seems to think that Deacon Hill is God, which I find hilarious. He keeps Deacon Hill must save Iowa, Deacon Hill to the rescue in Iowa. And then every time I join the chat, he gives me an update about how Deacon Hill is doing. So
yeah, I think
I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much, Adam. I just wanted to publicly thank you.
Well,
that's
Iowa
all I
does,
had, Mark.
For as bad as it's been, Iowa probably has its best quarterback since 2019.
That's kind of pathetic. I miss Nate. Let me tell you, Nate. As much as people were criticizing him at the time, I miss Nate Stanley. He was a good quarterback for us.
Oh yeah.
So
I like Nate Stanley too. I do think that there was some lack of development. Now, whether that was his inability to get better or that was lack of quarterback development, I don't know, because he was no better as a senior than he was as a sophomore. So that would be my only knock there. But oh yeah, he was miles ahead of their passing game now.
I mean, yeah, it's true. Nate Stanley didn't really get very much, development at Iowa, but we're not a quarterback school for the most part. And, as sad as it is, like, that's just the truth. And as much as I'm a fan of Iowa, I realize what we are. People have heard my rants. I realize what we are. I'm not gonna try to pretend to be some top 10 team when we're clearly not.
Well, you can be a quarterback school. You can become a quarterback school. And I'm not talking about throwing the ball 50 times and losing identity like you were just talking about with Wisconsin. No, they shouldn't do that. But there's a way to improve quarterback development, go out there and get somebody. And maybe Tim Lester is the guy to do that. We'll see when they actually recruit a quarterback and develop him and see what they can do. Let's see how they handle this next season in 2025, whether they're going to be satisfied with the quarterbacks in the room already and developing them, or they're going to go get another transfer quarterback.
So here's what I think is going to happen. And again, this is with the caveat, we're still rather early on in the season, et cetera, right? So I think what's going to end up happening, obviously Cade's going to be out of eligibility, which, not trying to be mean, I'm kind of glad because I'm kind of tired of seeing him out there not doing a good enough job.
Yep.
Especially like considering what we paid him and that we had a tampering violation to get him, but don't even get me going on that because you don't want to hear it because, yeah, that pisses me off a lot. Anyway, so here's what I think is going to happen. I think Sullivan's going to be our QB1 next year. I think that Marco Lainez is going to end up transferring out, which breaks my heart because I think he has so much potential. And I think we'll probably go to the portal to get someone more Tim Lester-esque, or we'll get someone out of high school. I know that they've been looking at a quarterback from California called Cash Herrera. Our main competition for him is UCLA. So that's going to be tough to pull him out of home, but it's possible. Who knows, right? Apparently Lester is a decent recruiter, so maybe it'll happen. But I don't know much about him. It's hard to tell much right now. So that's what I think is going to happen, though. I think Sullivan will be our quarterback next year, unless they get someone great from the transfer portal and Kirk trusts him enough to let him do what he needs to do, because Tim was a former quarterback himself. He's an actual quarterback coach, and unlike certain people who used to be working for Iowa's coaching staff, which I'm not even going there because I still have PTSD from that. But hopefully Kirk will let Tim do his thing, and hopefully, Sullivan ends up from now until then improving his ability to be a passer and just getting more experience somehow, even though I don't know how it's going to happen, since Iowa won't put him in a game except unless we're in the red zone. So should be interesting to see how things go.
It should be. Absolutely. Anything else, Erica?
Well, I was just going to say, it would be nice to become a quarterback school, because then between our defense and our special teams, watch out.
Well, yeah, I'm just basically saying there's no reason to be the worst quarterback team in the conference. There's no reason to have arguably the best defense, arguably and typically the best special teams without even question, and then have the worst quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm not saying, would it be great to get the best quarterback in the country? Of course, every team wants that. But I'm not even saying we need that necessarily. It can just be top, 10
that's
15.
What I'm saying. If you would go to any other quarterback room outside of what Nebraska's had the last couple of years, because they've been awful too, not talking about this year, but they were awful for a couple of years.
Yeah, they were poverty too, right.
That if you had, for as awful as Purdue is, if Hudson Card was your quarterback, you would be better.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not convinced on that one. And Michael, if you're still here, I apologize for what I'm about to say. But Iowa should have gotten charged for murder last year when we played Purdue, because we almost killed him. We massacred him.
Well, that's because he was facing the Iowa defense with an awful offensive line.
True, but I don't know. I haven't seen him this year. I shouldn't really judge, but because they're one of the teams that I haven't gotten to watch because the league is too big. But actually, speaking of Nebraska, you know what? I want to make a comment on them too. So I think Raiola, I did watch the Illinois and Nebraska game on Friday evening. I think Raiola is great. I think he's proving to be great, but I do think he has one glaring problem, and that is if the defensive line or the defensive players go after him, that's it. That's game over for him. You saw that happen during overtime. He totally, like when Illinois' defense went after him and got him, that was it. He self-imploded. So that is his one issue, or his one negative point, I guess. What do you think?
Well, I think that we should be understanding of the situation. So,
no, he's a freshman.
Raiola,
I know.
He's a true freshman. Cade McNamara has been around forever. Like, to compare those two guys, and Raiola's already much better than Cade McNamara.
Oh, so, for sure. I'm not saying that as a comparison. I'm not.
I understand that he showed some chinks in his armor, but that's the first close game he's ever played in.
And I'm surprised to see an Illinois team go in there and do what they did, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I was impressed with Illinois. They've
I
already
couldn't
beaten
believe it.
Kansas. Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. And it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the year goes for them. I don't know. What does their schedule look like? Do you know their schedule?
Oh, it's tough.
Is it?
Yeah. Let's pull it up right now. Let's see. We've got Illinois. I don't think it's on the screen yet, is it? So Illinois' got all right, rest of the
Penn
season.
State.
They got
Penn-
Penn State this week on the road, Purdue, Michigan, Oregon. Look at that back to back. Michigan,
Ooh.
Oregon, Minnesota. They should be able to handle them. And if they can't, then they are in trouble. Michigan State, Rutgers, Northwestern. That's doable.
Yeah, it's a doable schedule. It's not easy by any stretch, but it's doable if they keep playing well. I mean, I don't know. Can they beat Penn State? Can they beat Oregon? Like, they're not going to beat. They're going to beat for sure. They're going to beat Minnesota. I think Michigan State is a win. What's after Rutgers and then
Northwestern.
oh, Northwestern's garbage this year. So I'm not. Yeah, they're not great this year. I'm kind of disappointed because they looked pretty darn good last year when the new coach took over. But I don't know. I guess that's typical Northwestern protocol too, because they seem to be the type of team that dips and has valleys and mountains or whatever the expression is.
Yes, they do.
So I don't know what to think about Northwestern, but yeah, that's not an easy schedule, but it's doable. I mean,
it's doable, but Iowa wouldn't want that schedule.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of am in the mind that I want Iowa to get more respect, and we're not going to get respect with the bullshit schedules we have now.
Well, they obviously can't control the Big Ten schedule, and believe me, they'll see tougher schedules in the future.
Well, to be honest, as much as I feel that way, I also feel that this year is kind of a transition for us because we have the new OC and everything like that. So maybe it's a blessing that we have an easier schedule in a weird way. I don't know. Gives us time to adjust, I guess, and for our offense to learn. Although that being said, our offense is awfully veteran, so a lot of them are not going to be around next year. A lot of them are going to be off to the NFL or to being done with school.
A lot of people are confident, including, I believe, Corey, that Iowa will probably go 10-2. We'll only lose one more game. But if Iowa was playing this schedule, that'd be a tough prediction to make.
I don't know that I agree with that because that means, okay, so we lost to the shit clones. Did I say that out loud? Sorry, I shouldn't. This is a family channel. I shouldn't be saying what I'm saying. Sorry.
You're good. You're good.
So we lost to them. So that's one. So that's, even if we went out, we're 11-1, which we're not going to win out. I think that Ohio State, what I want for Ohio State is for us to be respectable. I don't think we're going to win the game, but I want us to be respectable, And then after that, who do we have? I don't even remember the schedule. Let me pull it up. Iowa football. Okay, so then we have Washington at home, which I think is doable based on what I've heard about Washington. That's another team I want to watch that I haven't gotten to. Then we have Michigan State at their house, which I'm not scared about that. Northwestern's coming to Iowa, not worried about it. Wisconsin's coming to Iowa, not worried about it. Iowa goes to UCLA. I guess maybe that could be interesting, but I'm not really that worried about that. Maryland, we're going over there. Last time we went over there, that was like the 54-14 game or whatever it was. That was a lot of fun. So maybe we'll have another fun time over there. That would be great. And then after Maryland, we've got Nebraska, which I think is going to be an interesting game because our guys know how to go after quarterbacks. So that should be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a manageable schedule, and I give Iowa a shot at winning in Columbus. And then they should be the favorite in the rest of the games.
You give Iowa a shot in Columbus? Are you saying that to be nice, or are you sincerely saying that?
No, I've said that the entire offseason. I'll give them a shot. I think they've got a 15% chance of winning.
Okay. And that would require a perfect game, which they haven't come close to a perfect game yet.
Well, a
Not
reasonably
close.
something close to a perfect game. Yes. Nobody
I
plays
mean,
perfect, but yes, they can't make mistakes. Wow. They
we can't play like we did last night.
no.
Unless we play the whole time like we did in the second half, then we can play like we did. But if you look at the game as a whole, we can't play that way.
Yeah. It's a different animal in 2 weeks.
And it's
It
in
definitely is.
Columbus. It's in Columbus too. So I mean, I would give us more of a chance if it were in Kinnick, maybe, especially given
Sure.
that 2017 game.
Of course.
You know, because Kinnick automatically gives us some advantage there. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to see us win. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I just don't see it. But what I want to see if we don't win is at least a respectable showing. Because that's just anything less than that is not acceptable in my book.
Yeah, just as a and this doesn't mean a whole lot, but it's just a point of comparison. Like Western Michigan went to Wisconsin and played really well and had a lead in the fourth quarter a couple weeks ago. And we're up 14-13. And if they wouldn't have muffed a punt, who knows? They might have pulled out that game. And then they went to Ohio State the next week, and Ohio State had 500 yards of offense in the first half.
Holy cow. I don't think that's going to happen with an Iowa defense.
No, that's not. That is going to be a great matchup. Ohio State's offense against Iowa's defense.
Well, I'll tell you, one vulnerability that Iowa's defense has, which isn't rocket science, everybody who knows anything about college football knows this, that this year the secondary is not the usual Phil Parker secondary.
Yeah.
And I've been saying that they need to, so Jamari Harris is on the left side of the field at corner. I'm not that worried about him. He's usually pretty good. Last night he had a few decisions that he made when playing, but I'm not that worried about him. On the other side of the field, I'm worried about that position because we don't really have, well, they could put Deshaun Lee there, I guess. He's pretty good, but they had picked, what happened to Iowa State is they picked TJ Hall, who's not as experienced in game and who Nebraska beat up on the previous year. And that kind of led to what happened against Iowa State, where we ended up losing because they saw that we had a vulnerability in TJ Hall being that second corner, and they went after it, which that's what a good team does, so they won. So I think that's definitely something that Phil Parker is going to have to really work on during the bye week because we luckily have a bye week next weekend. I think that's a good time to have it. That gives us chances to work on our issues, and hopefully they take advantage of that bye week.
Yes, this is a good time to have a bye week, is to prepare for that passing attack and their biggest challenge of the season. So while Ohio State has to focus on a pretty good Michigan State team that's playing well, should have won last night, but lost to Boston College and already has a win against Maryland. Michigan State's much improved. Ohio State's going to have to focus. They can't just think that they're going to roll through and beat Michigan State, although I got to think they're about a 25-point favorite. They're going to have to put their attention on Michigan State while Iowa's got an extra week to get prepared for Ohio State. So that's definitely an advantage.
Yep, definitely, for sure. All right. Well, anyway, I think I've taken up enough of your time, but thank you for the conversation as always. And we will see what happens in Columbus, not next weekend, but the week after. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Erica.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Adam makes the comment here that the Horseshoe is not one of the toughest places to play, in my view. I don't really know how to rate that. Whether the stadium is the toughest, obviously it's one of the largest stadiums. I'm not going to try to sell it as one of the noisiest stadiums. I think it is when it has to be. When, that crowd, they've been pretty pampered and spoiled for years and years and years. So unless they're playing somebody that they think is worthy of challenging them, that stadium's not loud. But again, there's 110,000 people there. Now, in terms of when you combine the team that's on the field with the stadium, well, that's a whole different deal because how often does Ohio State lose at home? What do they lose, about 3 or 4 times every 10 years? Something like that. So if you're talking about the chances of somebody losing at home, It's about as minuscule as anybody in the country. I got to think that they've got one of the best home records. Well, obviously they do because they've got one of the best records in the country. So they're going to have one of the best home records in the country. They lost to Michigan in 22. They lost to Oregon in 21. They lost to Oklahoma in 17. Lost to Michigan State in 15. They lost to Virginia Tech in 14. Nobody in 13. Nobody in 12. So during the Urban Meyer, Ryan Day era, what is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 5 losses in 12 years, going on 13 seasons, 5 losses at home. They've probably played 7 to 8 games a year. That's about 80 to 90 games. They're like 75-5 at home. It's pretty good. All right, let's wrap it up. We'll hear from Jackson on our way out. Jackson, what's going on?
It's going pretty good. Just getting ready for another Sunday and got through seeing another exciting Saturday. How you doing today, man?
Doing well. Doing well.
Well, I will say North Carolina has been having a lot of trouble with as of yesterday, and we don't know what's going to happen with Matt Brown. Where he's just kind of like, if the rest of the season is more of the same from yesterday, I'm going to resign. And I'll be honest, North Carolina, Chapel Hill is going to have to think about the future right now. And if they're not, now would be a good time.
Yeah, I would see the rest of the season play out most likely. I haven't given it too much thought, but Mac Brown is obviously not the future. He just is not at the age where he would be the future, regardless of how well he's doing. So that should be part of the equation. Not trying to be biased against older people, or obviously we've got laws in this country against hiring based on age, but it's just a fact of life that Mac Brown is not the future. So they need to figure out who the future is. And if Mac Brown was winning big right now, they should still be thinking about the future, but he's not. And he immediately elevated that program to respectability, and they've done nothing but, I would say, level off, but now they're in decline. So, yeah. They have plenty of resources there, and it's a great school and great recruiting region. That North Carolina football should be so much better.
Oh, yeah. Because it was just disastrous, like allowing 53 points in the first half. That was just terrible. You don't do that. And I don't see
Kurt if you're playing Tennessee or Ohio State or somebody like that, Texas. They shouldn't even be doing that.
No, it's like you just don't do that. I mean, that defensive staff just needs to get overhauled, quit fast in a hurry.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to be happening, but if North Carolina's losing to Duke next Saturday, it's definitely panic time if it isn't right now. And as of yesterday, it was pretty exciting seeing a little bit of Kansas, West Virginia, because I was talking with Joey on the phone a lot about West Virginia. We were talking about what's going to happen with Neil Brown, and Garrett Green's going to have to be utilized perfectly. And apparently Neil Brown did just that in the last 2 drives of West Virginia's touchdowns in that comeback, where they were trailing 28-17 with 5 minutes left in the game. And then I love that 2-point conversion that they made on when they were trailing 28-23. It was like that little Philly special. That was pretty cool right there.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like, oh man, they must be watching a little bit of 2018 Super Bowl between Eagles Patriots. But it was a nice win for Garrett Green.
Absolutely. I shouldn't call out our buddy Joey, but he texted me about 3 times near the end of that game, just cussing out Neil Brown because he assumed.
Oh yeah, he was doing the same thing. He was like, I'm gonna get him out myself. I'm like, he was not too thrilled, but and I told him yesterday, that where he was like, oh well, we shouldn't have been at this point with Kansas, but you got to remember, even though Kansas is disastrous this year, this is Kansas with Lance Leipold, not 0-12 Kansas or 1-11 Kansas. I mean that I think Kansas can rebound by just a little bit because they've got an easier schedule compared to like West Virginia. Because I mean, I don't see an Oklahoma State or a Utah on that schedule. Yeah, they got to deal with Kansas State and Iowa State, but I mean, Kansas State's on the road and Iowa State's at home, so I think they can. I think they could tango with them a little bit. And plus, I think the down period will be enough of a motivator for them. But if Kansas loses the TCU Nets Saturday, I won't be so nice.
Yeah, well, nobody should be losing to TCU these days the way they're playing on defense. Talk about awful defense.
Oh, Lord. Like 69-45 on the CW. And a day before that, you're running a post on X about, oh, the CW. It's like, no. Like, I don't know which was worse, that or Florida State bragging about beating Cal. You did not beat the 1938 Rose Bowl champion version of Cal. You did not beat Aaron Rodgers' Cal. You beat a Cal team that just joined the ACC, and you're bragging about that. I mean, that's just bad.
And if Cal had a field goal kicker, they wouldn't have beaten Cal.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so sorry that Cal screwed you out of the. They screwed you out of it.
Yeah, so I'm watching this game. I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm watching this game just because I started off obviously watching Oklahoma, Tennessee, and then I was thinking Iowa, Minnesota would be my second game. But Oklahoma and Tennessee, it didn't take long for me to figure out, well, this game's not a blowout, but I just don't see Oklahoma. I just don't see them as a threat to winning this game. Just Tennessee was just the Oklahoma offense is just a mess, as you know. So I started flipping around and I come across this probably at halftime. I come across this Florida State Cal game and I'm thinking 7-6 going into the fourth quarter. And then, there's a couple more scores and Florida State takes the lead and Cal kicker misses 2 35-yard field goals. And then what that does is that since they lose the game 14-9, if they would have made both of them, they probably win the game 15-14. If they make one of them, then they're only down 14-12 because they drove in the red zone on their last drive. They could have kicked a field goal to win the game, but they were down by 5. So that completely botched their strategy, just botched the complexion of the game.
Oh man, and I remember yesterday where Justin was talking about field goal kickers and where Temple made that 64-yarder. It was like it's like a inside joke with the football gods. I'm like, oh man, I am so sorry for you, man.
I know.
Oh man, but something that's not an inside joke. Tune in every Monday through Friday where you can tell your friends, your family at the cashiers at Publix about the college football show from Mark Rogers himself, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, where he brings on some of the top college football experts to give their takes on the upcoming week previews. Also, don't forget to tell everybody about the upcoming book release that Mark has about the disputed national champions, a 90s reset. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to want to buy it. If you don't have anything on your Christmas list, you better put it on your Christmas list right here, right now. I know I am. I was like, man, it's not going to be on September 30th. Oh, well, I could just get it as an early Christmas present. After all, I think I've been a pretty good boy, haven't I? I hope I am.
In my book, Jackson, the best. The best. You're at the top of my list. You can even go do a bunch of naughty things. Just don't tell me about it. But with everything that you do here, hey, you're at the top of the list regardless. Hey, we all have our sordid past.
Well, there we go. Well, as Michael DeSanto on Grand Theft Auto says, you forget 1,000 things every day. Make sure this is one of them.
Those are words to live by.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Jackson, as soon as I get off here, I apologize. I didn't see your message from yesterday, but as soon as we get off here, if you have a second, you can set up your show and I'll send you the code.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Everybody, Jackson's on the Alabama channel at 6 p.m. Eastern time every Monday. So it's Monday, 6 Eastern, 5 Central, where it counts in Tuscaloosa in the Central Time Zone. And that's every Monday. And of course, you can't miss this week, Alabama, Georgia.
Especially where I got Palmer Toms from Dodds HQ at On3 discussing his take on the Georgia Bulldogs with Johnny Burtz and I tomorrow afternoon. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay tuned.
There you go. You got Jackson, Johnny Burks, and Palmer Toms from On3 on the Alabama show with the big Georgia preview. Awesome.
There we go.
All right, Jackson, appreciate you showing up. Thanks for waiting. You know, we always put all the hosts at the back of the line because we want to get the viewers in first. So
that's
the
all
only
right.
reason we do that.
It's all right with me.
All right. Thanks, Jackson. Good to see you.
You're welcome, Mark.
And just to reiterate what Jackson's saying here, actually, we're going to do a slight change here because I am doing 17 shows a week, folks. So on Thursday and Friday, we're basically moving that morning show to post game is what we're going to do. We're basically taking the Thursday and Friday shows, moving them to post game shows after the games on Thursday and Friday. So we'll be here every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And then, of course, the Sunday show is right now at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Not to confuse you there, but it just works out in regards to my own personal schedule that we've got to do that on Sunday at 11, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 10. And then again, just to knock 2 shows off of my list and knock it down to 15 a week, we'll go late night on Thursday and Friday here at the Voice of College Football. Okay, next up is the College Football After Dark show, and that's going to be tonight at 10:30 Eastern right here on the main channel. As Jackson was saying, this will be released on October 29th. Tuesday, October 29th, we will point you to Amazon where you can order the Disputed National Champions book, College Football's Historical 1990s Reset. Not just looking at the historical significance here, but we are projecting these seasons forward. So we are taking all these seasons, and in addition to analyzing each season, the outcomes, the results, the scenarios, the storylines, who got left out, was it justified? Was the vote justified? Was it valid? We're also taking these seasons and putting them in future playoff models. We're taking these seasons in the 1990s and putting them in the BCS model, in the 14 playoff model, in the 12-team playoff model. And of course, we know that there is a 14-team proposal out there. So we did that as well. So give it a consideration. Again, that's going to be released on October 29th. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football After Dark tonight. And I will see you at 10 a.m. Eastern right here on Monday.